you want to keep the best beekeeper in your orchard, you need to be doing something like this. This is going to be what retains them. They are really excited to see this when they're dropping their colonies down.
I do not think the flowering cover crop affects the yields at all. In fact, we've had some of our biggest crops in years where I had massive cover crop stand.
You're going to increase your water infiltration. You have a potential of suppressing the weeds. You have a potential of actually adding some nitrogen to your soil system. You can keep the dust down. You're covering the soil, which is actually what you're growing your trees in.
Cover crops have a long-standing history and are experiencing renewed interest in modern farming. With this interest comes important research on how cover crops fit into modern agriculture. But many farmers still have concerns. In this video, we'll break down the most common concerns and what they really mean for your farm. One of the biggest concerns almond farmers have is whether cover crops take bees away from their trees. But is that really the case?
So you can see we've got 2 blooming plants behind us, and one could imagine that the honeybees coming out of the colony might skip the almonds and go straight to the floor here and just spend all their time on the brassica. All those colonies that you've worked hard to bring into your fields, they're not doing the work. So that's the concern. But the research that has been done has shown that actually it keeps the bees in your fields. Almonds are super attractive. Honeybees love going to almonds. In Australia, there was a study in almonds where they looked at the diversity of pollen being brought back into the colony and the amount of almond pollen that was being collected. What they found was that if there was a diversity of pollen sources, the honeybees were stimulated to collect even more almond pollen. So it actually contributed more to almond pollination.
Well, what we see is that there's almost nothing more attractive to bees than almond pollen. Very nutritious. And what happens is in the morning they go out and they collect the pollen, and then they will strip that day's pollen. And then when they're out of pollen, they won't work on those trees anymore, and they'll move down to the cover crops and they'll start working that pollen. The attraction is far greater in the almond trees, and when the pollen is collected out of these trees, then they have something else to go to.
What you want is a strong colony. There is this effect that as the colony grows, it starts to put out more workers, and those workers forage more. So you get more of a foraging force. So any way you cut it, when it comes to almonds, putting in a cover crop actually will increase pollination.
This is a flux tower. It is deployed in the orchard, so it has multiple levels so that we can collect the data as the wind is mixing the air through the orchard and bringing it to this point measurement, and then have actually captions of data of all this landscape as it mixes the cover crop, soil, almonds, everything comes together into those values we record at the top. I'm Kosana Suvacharev. I'm Assistant Professor of Cooperative Extension in Biometeorology. We're focusing on studying the atmosphere and plant interaction to see how different cover crop or bare soil almonds are having this exchange between soil, plant, and atmosphere. We installed this 40 inches deep soil profilers. It will measure how much the cover crops help us infiltrate water and from which depths they're using water from. When we are in a cover crop of this height, we can see how there is a more soil moisture underneath than the strip that is dry next to it. We see how much it actually protects it from direct impacts of the atmosphere.
Here's an example of the amount of moisture still on the soil surface underneath of a cover crop compared to no cover crop. Under the cover crop is going to stay that moist for that much longer than what's underneath of the trees that's bare. Organic matter allows that soil to absorb and hold water longer than bare soil with very little organic matter or no organic matter in it. It acts like a sponge.
Look at this, large surface.
I have not found that I've had to run additional irrigations. Over the years that I've been doing cover crop, we've actually have not increased our water consumption at all. If anything, I have probably reduced the water consumption by a bit.
We found out that there wasn't a significant difference in water use between different orchards. Although we had very bare soil, we had a cover crop that only has strips of cover crop. We had orchards that have full cover crop. All these orchards were not significantly different from each other. The highest water user 2 years in a row was actually bare soil almond with drip irrigation. So we were surprised to find those results, but there wasn't a significant difference. So we think that all the benefits of cover crops that my colleagues are studying and recommending don't come at higher cost in water.
A few years ago, we had some of the lowest temperatures that we've seen during the bloom and post-bloom. I had a very big cover crop at the time, and I really wasn't willing to terminate it because it was just peak, and there was so much more I could get out of it. So I took the risk and I didn't terminate. On my larger trees in the back with a full canopy, I'm talking 6-foot high cover crop, I did not have any frost damage at all. On my younger trees on the front, they were only third leaf trees, and so they were very small, no canopy whatsoever. I did have some damage, so I feel like there's some other things at play. I know that UC Davis has been looking at this.
When cover crops are tall, like we see in this orchard, applying water with irrigation as a frost protection measure is actually increasing the temperature in the orchard. And very small increase in the temperature could put us over that critical threshold where frost won't happen. And our hypothesis is that that will increase more temperature than if bare soils were sprinkled with water.
One of the big trade-offs with cover crops, because there's trade-offs for every single great practice out there, is that as much as pollinators love the cover crops, so do gophers. And they can go in and sort of make a mess of your orchard floor, make it sort of lumpy. And I find that it's the worst during the spring. They're very active, their babies are starting to become active. But as I start to crimp that down and then start to mow it, those gophers become more exposed to predators like owls, and we do keep a lot of owl boxes around here. Also, because we do groundwater recharge here, where we actually flood irrigate, we use that as an opportunity to do a little bit of population reduction. The other thing I've also thought about and talked to other scientists about are if gophers are providing some sort of ecosystem benefit, because they are like tunneling around. Maybe they help with compaction and nutrient cycling as well.
Brassicas have been described as buggy plants. I suspect that comes from when mowed, often you chase a lot of true bugs out of them. Another phenomenon I've seen is that they will get aphids in the blooms. An advantage of that is aphids are food for every beneficial insect out there, so you're jump-starting your beneficial population. So they do not seem to attract anything else in the way of like cutworms or lepidopteras or anything like that. On the beneficial insect front, cover crops are a much bigger benefit. They provide forage, they provide shelter, and they provide water for the beneficial insects and their prey. Beneficial insects population is almost always behind the problem insect that they feed on. So you're always chasing it. So getting that jump start early, having a cover crop out there, and building those populations early in the season versus hoping they're going to catch up. And that is a very popular reason for having a cover crop.
I have seen a huge benefit to the orchard because of all the beneficial insects. I took the risk and stopped spraying for mites about 5 years ago because I knew that I had a lot of predators in there. I was like, well, let's just see what happens. And even though last year, after a very severe heat wave, pretty much everybody in the valley saw mites come in right before harvest. I didn't treat because I didn't want to, but also because it was so close to harvest, it was not an option, even if I had wanted to. And I did get some. On my front orchard, I got a little bit, but then the predators came in and knocked them back down. On the back side, the older trees, I saw a little bit more, but then after a few weeks, that population had gotten knocked down. Not to say that they didn't do some damage, but I was able to get that mite population to go back down. So it was nice being in that situation that I had the insects to come in and do part of the job. I think a lot of people think it's actually this very big added expense, but the seed itself isn't really a huge cost. And if you have some of the equipment or the ability to plant it yourself, it's not as big of a lift as some other things that we face in the industry.
By having a cover crop out there, we're providing beneficial insects with habitat and forage in the form of nectar a lot of times, or pollen they have to complete their life cycle, and that ramps that population up faster to keep up with the harmful insects.
We want that diversity. The bees look for that diversity, much like we need a diverse diet, so do the bees. And almond pollen is a great diet. It's a great protein source, but that mixture of the proteins is very good for the beehive.
Initiatives like this in the long term are going to allow colonies to really flourish at a critical time in their life cycle. So I think for a grower, thinking about this both in terms of your short term retaining a beekeeper, but also in the long term of increasing colony supply so that prices go down, and that's going to increase the supply, that's going to bring pollination rates down.
This has been a Seeds for Bees production. Seeds for Bees offers free or subsidized cover crop seed to farmers and beekeepers within the state of California. Beekeepers renting hives to Californian orchards can play a vital role by encouraging orchard managers to apply for free or subsidized cover crop seed through the Seeds for Bees program. Those interested in applying can do so at Project Apis M's website.